Hi, welcome. Lately, I've been craving some brownies. So, today we're going to make some. Let's get started. First, this is the recipe I'm going to be using today. It's from Anna.and.English. I'll post a link in the description if you want to try and make brownies on your own. Second, I'm not a professional baker, so this is probably going to be a little messy. Please don't use this video as instructions on how to bake, okay? Let's start. Now, I'm going to prepare my baking pan. I'm going to use this small square one that fits nicely in my air fryer. This is Hokkaido butter. It's popular in Japan. And importantly, it is unsalted butter. In baking, you usually want to use unsalted butter. Now, you can also use something called parchment paper. This is just a special paper that is a little waxy and won't burn in the oven like regular paper. You can take this, cover your pan with it, and it will also make sure that your brownies don't stick. But today, I'm going to use butter. You want to coat the entire pan in a thin layer of butter. If it's too thick, the butter won't melt and your brownies will taste bad. But you need to be careful and make sure you get the entire pan. If you miss spots, the brownies are going to stick to the pan and it's going to be difficult to get them out. To measure ingredients, I'm using a scale that I bought from Daiso. I'm also going to use a medium glass bowl and a small bowl. Now, with my medium glass bowl, I'm going to zero out the scale. Now, when I put the flour directly in the bowl, I don't have to worry about the bowl's weight. I need to grab my flour. For the flour, I'm going to use a small scoop to put the flour into the bowl. That way I can have some more control of how much I'm putting at a time. I need about 40 grams of flour. Because I'm filming, I'm only baking this using one hand, which does make things a little more difficult and a bit messy. Hopefully for future videos, I'll have a tripod to hold my camera so things can be maybe a little smoother. Almost there. I need 43 grams. Perfect. So, I'm going to go ahead and put my flour away and clear the scale. Next, I'm going to grab the small bowl. I don't want to use the medium glass bowl because if I make any mistakes in measuring, it's going to be difficult to fix. With the small bowl, it's a lot easier to adjust the amount. I'm going to be putting cocoa powder. This cocoa powder will give the brownies their chocolatey taste. The packet I'm using is just some leftover from last time I baked. But I'm going to need a little more, so I'm going to grab a new bag. This bag's kind of cute. It has Disney characters on it. Do you like Disney? Please tell me your favorite Disney character. Okay, I just need 29 grams, and that's perfect. Now, I need you to look closely at the cocoa powder. You'll see clumps. You don't want clumps in your cocoa powder. So, I'm going to put the cocoa powder into a sieve. This is a sieve. It has very small holes for the powder to go through. Now my sieve is very large, so this is probably going to be a little messy. But I'll do my best to just get the cocoa powder in the bowl and not on the table. I'm going to try and keep it mostly in the middle, but I don't think I'll be able to avoid getting at least some of it on the table. Oh, that's kind of noisy. Let's turn it around so it's not as noisy. That's better. Okay, so when you shake it back and forth, if you look in the bowl, you can see the cocoa powder slowly passing through. That's how a sieve works. It's really good for making your baking smooth. Now I have no more clumps. I cleaned up from the powder that got on the table, and I can move on to the last dry ingredient. It's salt. Just plain salt. I'm going to use this really big box of salt, but I only need a little, so I'm worried that I'm going to put way too much. Oh, yeah, that's way too much. Okay, let me fix this. Okay, this is much better. That's about how much salt I need for this recipe, about 5 milliliters. I'm going to go ahead and add that in to the flour and cocoa powder. Now that was my last dry ingredient. So I'm going to clear my scale and use this spatula to mix all the dry ingredients together. When you're baking, usually you mix the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients separately. You combine them after you mix them separately. So that's what I'm doing. I'm mixing these dry ingredients. Now, when you mix them, you kind of want to make everything one color. So you don't want brown parts and white parts. You want to turn everything into a light brown color. Mixing dry ingredients is pretty easy. I can even do it one-handed without any problem. Okay, it looks like most of the ingredients are mixed together to make this kind of light brown color. So I should be good to move on to preheating my air fryer. I don't have a big oven, so I'm using an air fryer. It's not the best for brownies, but it's okay. I'm going to turn it to 170 degrees Celsius for 5 minutes, just to preheat it. I like to do this before I mix my wet ingredients for good timing. My first wet ingredient is butter. I need 65 grams, and the recipe told me to melt the butter. So we're going to use the microwave. I'm going to put it in the microwave on the lowest setting for about a minute. That should be enough to get it mostly melted. I want to be careful not to burn or boil the butter. That creates a bad flavor, and I would have to throw it away and start over with new butter. Okay, I think it's almost done. Let's check on the butter. Not fully melted, but it's enough. So I'll put the butter into my large mixing bowl. I use a larger mixing bowl for the wet ingredients because they're usually more messy than the dry ingredients. This next ingredient might be a little confusing, but it's sugar. Sugar is usually mixed with the wet ingredients, even though technically by itself it's dry. I'm using brown sugar. The recipe says to use granulated white sugar, but I don't have any. I don't mind the change, but I wouldn't recommend it for anyone else. My brown sugar is pretty clumpy. I think it's because where I live is so humid. It's a bit difficult to scoop out. I tried to kind of take a minute and see if I could make it less clumpy, but it didn't really work. Okay, almost there. Just a little more. Perfect, 100 grams. Okay, now I can put my brown sugar away and add the brown sugar I measured into the large bowl. Now I'm going to go ahead and mix the brown sugar and the melted butter together. While I'm mixing, I'm going to try and break up some of the clumpiness of the brown sugar. The spatula is doing a pretty good job of making sure the ingredients aren't sticking to the side of the bowl. Needs a little more mixing. Now for vanilla. I don't have very much vanilla left, so I'm going to have to just add the rest of this bottle into my bowl and hope it's enough. Again, I don't recommend this to anyone else. Okay, there we go. Now I can put that away and grab my last ingredient, which is an egg. Now, because I'm filming, I'm going to have to crack this with one hand. Can you crack an egg one-handed? It's kind of difficult, and I didn't do a great job, but there's no shell in the bowl, so we're all good. Now it's time to mix the wet ingredients. I want to mix them until they're combined and kind of smooth. Okay, they're combined and smooth. Now I want to grab the dry ingredients and put them into the wet ingredients. You don't want to put all of the dry ingredients in at one time. So today I'm going to put about half of the dry ingredients in at first. And then I'm going to mix it for a while. Only putting half in helps make sure that the ingredients combine more thoroughly. Mixing can take a little bit, but the first half is through. Now I'm going to put in the rest. I'll need to mix until I get a nice, smooth brownie batter. It's a bit difficult to do this with one hand. There we are. This is what your brownie batter should look like. Now, chocolate chips. I like adding chocolate chips into my brownie batter. The recipe does have a measurement amount, but I prefer to just add as much as I want. I like my brownies very chocolatey, so I add quite a lot. Now I'm just gonna stir it a few times to make sure that the chocolate chips are spread throughout the batter. Okay. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, now I need to grab the pan we prepared earlier. Do you remember that? Okay, I'm going to put the batter inside this baking pan. There we go. It got a little messy, but it should taste just fine. Now, I need to be careful because the air fryer is already hot. There we go. I need to set the temperature and time again. It's still going to cook at 170 degrees Celsius, but this time I'm setting the time for 10 minutes. Let's check back later. Okay, the timer went off. Let's see if they are done. I'm going to use a toothpick. If it comes out with a lot of brownie on it, then they're not finished. It still looks a little undone. So yeah, it needs a few more minutes. Okay, let's put it back. Now, I think maybe 3 more minutes should be enough. Okay. Let's start it and I'll come back later. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I think that looks finished. So let's go ahead and put it on the table and I'll grab the brownies from the air fryer. Please be careful if you're following along. I don't want you to burn yourself. I have a bad habit of burning myself. Okay, I need to grab a plate. Okay, I'm going to use this butter knife to get my brownies out of the pan. I'm just going to cut along the edge and hopefully they will come out. I do think that maybe I cooked them a little too long. These brownies are sounding a little crunchy. Okay, the brownies are out of the pan and it wasn't too difficult. But yeah, I think maybe I burned the top of the brownies a little bit. But the insides should still taste fine. I'm going to cut these brownies into 9 pieces and try to make them nice little even squares, but it's always a little challenging to make everything even. Although, actually, that first row looks pretty good. Those are pretty even squares. Oh no. Well, that bottom corner is a little crispy. Oh well, those are my brownies. Let's enjoy. Thank you for listening today. Goodbye.